At the airport, my parents had the nerve to cancel my ticket and laugh like it was the funniest thing they'd ever done. "Enjoy your cab ride, loser," my mom sneered. I just smiled, shrugged, and said, "All right." When they got back later, they weren't ready for what was waiting. The lady at the airline counter barely looked up from her screen when she spoke, her tone flat like she'd said it 100 times before. "I'm sorry, sir, but your ticket's been cancelled." For a second, I thought maybe I'd heard her wrong. Cancelled? That couldn't be right. This trip had been arranged by my parents. I was supposed to be flying out with them, not standing there like some confused idiot. I quickly pulled out my phone, opened the confirmation email, and showed it to her. "There's gotta be a mistake," I said. "My parents booked this flight for me. I'm supposed to be on that plane today." She barely glanced at the screen before shaking her head. "I see the reservation, but it was cancelled 2 days ago." That made my stomach sink. 2 days ago? There were only 2 people who had access to that reservation, and I knew exactly who they were. Right as that realization settled in, my phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my mom. "Enjoy your taxi ride home, loser. Happy New Year." I just stood there staring at it. I must have read that message 3, maybe 4 times, trying to make sense of it. Hoping there was some kind of explanation that didn't involve them doing exactly what they did. But there wasn't. No apology. No misunderstanding. Just that one smug line. And honestly, I wasn't even surprised. Not really. This was just another one of their sick jokes, another way to remind me that I never quite belonged in my own family. My parents had always doted on my younger sister, Katie. She was the favorite, the golden child. The one who got a brand new car the moment she turned 16. She was the one they couldn't stop bragging about at every holiday dinner. The one who walked on water in their eyes. Me? I was just background noise. Looking back, I probably should have seen something like this coming. But even for them, this was a new low. I clenched my jaw, pulled up my messages, and typed out a simple response. "There's a surprise waiting for you when you get back." I hit send and saw that little red notification pop up almost immediately. A few seconds later, her name lit up my screen. She was calling. I let it ring. Then she tried again. And again. I just slipped my phone into my pocket, turned around, and walked straight out of that airport without a second glance. They thought they'd pulled off the ultimate joke, but they had no idea that this was just the start of something bigger. I stepped outside into the biting cold, hands tucked in my coat pockets. Most people in my position would have been angry, embarrassed, maybe even desperate. But me? I was grinning. Because they thought they had the upper hand. They figured I'd be panicking, blowing up their phones, begging them to fix the mess they made. They pictured me riding home in some beat-up cab, broken, beaten down, crawling back to my apartment that I could barely afford. But what they didn't know was that I'd been quietly preparing for this moment for a long time. For years, I was the one holding everything together behind the scenes. I was the guy who paid their overdue bills. I helped fix up their house when it was falling apart. I even footed the bill for Katie's college tuition when my parents claimed they couldn't swing it. And they always told me it was just part of being a good brother. Like it was my duty to carry everyone else on my back. They took with fake smiles, like they were doing me a favor just by keeping me around. But over time, I learned something important. When people think you're dependent on them, they never expect you to walk away. And not only was I walking away, I was setting the bridge on fire as I left. First thing I did when I got home was open the desk drawer and pull out a folder I'd been quietly putting together for months. Inside were 2 things, the title documents for the car I had given my mom last year, and paperwork for the joint savings account my dad convinced me to open. He'd called it an emergency fund. The car? Still legally mine. The account? Mostly filled with money I had personally contributed. They thought they could dump me and get away with it? Fine. I was about to show them how it feels to lose something valuable. Within the hour, I had a buyer lined up for the car. It was barely a year old, still in great condition, and I knew it would sell quick. A guy messaged me offering cash, and I agreed on the spot. As for that savings account? Took me all of 5 minutes to move every last penny into my personal bank account. By the time my mom called again, I was already on my way to hand over the keys. I didn't answer. Then my dad tried calling. Sent it straight to voicemail. Even Katie chimed in with a lazy text. Mom's losing it. Just call her. I didn't respond. Let them sweat. By the time the clock hit midnight, I was $6,000 richer and feeling freer than I had in years. But the best part? They still had no clue what was coming next. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was blowing up with missed calls and frantic messages. Guess they'd finally realized what I'd done, because the tone had definitely changed. Gone was the smug attitude. Now they were furious. My mom texted, "Where is my car?" Dad followed with, "You had no right to touch that money." That was OURS. Then Mom again, "Are you insane? It was just a joke. Call me now." I leaned back in my chair, sipped my coffee, and scrolled through their tantrums like I was reading the comics. A joke, huh? Just like all the others over the years. Like when they told me I was an accident, and laughed that you can't return a baby. Or the time they forgot to pay my college application fees while making sure Katie's were handled on day one. Their idea of humor always seemed to come at my expense. And I could picture them now, lounging at some overpriced resort, expecting to enjoy the fallout of their prank only to realize I'd flipped the script. They weren't going to be laughing when they got home. I'd already started cutting myself loose. But I had one last thing to finish. I opened my laptop and pulled up an email I'd been saving in drafts for weeks. Subject line, resignation. I'd spent years working at my dad's construction company. It was small, but it made good money. And he used that job like a leash around my neck. Always reminding me, "Be thankful we gave you a job. You'd never make it anywhere else. This business could be yours someday if you prove yourself." I let myself believe that lie for way too long. But deep down, I always knew the truth. I was never going to run that company. That honor was being saved for whoever Katie decided to marry. Dad didn't even try to hide it anymore. But I wasn't just quitting, I was stepping into something better. Months earlier, I had started putting out feelers, reaching beyond my dad's reach. I networked, made connections, and eventually, one of his biggest competitors came to me with a job offer. I hadn't accepted it right away. I didn't wait out of loyalty. I waited because I needed the timing to be right. And now, there was nothing left tying me down. I hit send on that resignation email without a second thought. Barely a minute later, my phone buzzed. It was my new boss. "Welcome aboard," the message read. "We're lucky to have you." I stared at those words for a second and thought, yeah, lucky. I exhaled and closed my laptop. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was actually winning. And the best part? My parents had no clue what was heading their way. I didn't have to wait long to watch it all blow up. By the time their plane landed, my phone was vibrating nonstop with incoming calls and frantic texts. I didn't answer a single one. Then came the knocking, sharp, impatient, and angry. It started with my mom. "Open this door right now," she hissed from the other side, her voice all tight and shaky. "We need to talk." I let her simmer out there for a minute. Made her wait. Then, nice and slow, I opened the door. There she stood, eyes blazing and cheeks flushed, like she'd just run a mile fueled by pure rage. My dad stood behind her with his arms crossed and that classic bulldog scowl on his face. "And Katie?" She hung back a little, trying to look amused, like she wasn't bothered. But I saw the way her jaw was clenched. She wasn't fooling anyone. They'd clearly expected to come home to a groveling apology. But I was calm. Actually felt kind of relaxed, to be honest. "You stole my car," my mom snapped, her voice sharp like glass. I leaned casually against the doorframe. "Nope. I sold my car." That hit her like a slap. She blinked, stunned. "You bought that for me," she shouted. I shrugged. "Yeah. And then I realized I didn't owe you a damn thing." Her hands curled into fists, her face scrunched up like she couldn't believe I'd said that. "And the savings account," she snapped. "That was a family fund." I actually laughed at that. "Come on, Mom. That was my money. You just got used to pretending it was yours." That's when my dad decided to step in, puffing himself up like the tough guy he used to be able to scare me with. "Didn't work now." "Enough," he growled, trying to sound like he was still in charge. "You're acting like a spoiled brat. We had a little fun at your expense, and you blow it all up over that?" I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Oh, right. A little fun. It was a joke, my mom shrieked. And now you're being cruel. You embarrassed us. You humiliated us. I looked her dead in the eye. Oh, like the time you left me stranded at the airport? Like how you've treated me like a backup plan my entire life? That shut them up. For once, neither of them had a comeback. Even Katie looked caught off guard. Come on, she scoffed, rolling her eyes. You're being dramatic. You were fine. It's not like you needed that ticket. I turned to her, a grin creeping across my face. You know what? You're right. I didn't need the ticket. And I don't need any of you, either. Their faces shifted, confusion, then panic, creeping in slow. And then I dropped the real bomb. Oh, and by the way, I quit Dad's company. My dad's face went ghost white. You did what? I took a better offer, I said with a smirk. You know, from the folks you've been trying to undercut for years. Turns out they actually value the work I do. The color drained from his face so fast, I half expected him to collapse. His company was already on shaky legs. Losing me? That was going to knock the whole thing off balance. Katie's jaw dropped. You laughed? Just like that? Just like that. My mom's voice dropped to a whisper. You can't do this to us. I let that sit for a second, just long enough to watch it sink in. Then I smiled. Already did. And with that, I shut the door in their faces. I stood there for a moment, listening to the chaos outside. My mom's voice getting louder, saying I'd lost my mind. My dad muttering curses under his breath. Katie scoffing and calling me ungrateful. But me? I just smiled. Because for the first time ever, I felt free. The next few days were oddly quiet. No angry calls. No guilt-trippy voicemails. Just silence. Which told me everything I needed to know. They weren't done. They were regrouping. Planning their next move. And sure enough, it showed up in the form of Uncle Dave. He was always the family's so-called peacemaker. The calm voice. The middleman. The guy they sent in when they needed someone to smooth things over without getting their own hands dirty. We met at a quiet little cafe. He sat across from me, stirring his coffee like he was warming up for a sermon. Look, he began, his voice low and measured. I understand why you're upset. What your parents did wasn't right. He paused, then leaned forward a bit. But don't you think you've made your point? I sipped my coffee, letting him talk. They're your family, he said, like that word was supposed to mean something. They love you. You don't want to burn bridges over one bad decision, do you? I set my cup down and looked him straight in the eye. Uncle Dave, where was this energy when they left me stranded at an airport? He sighed, eyes dropping to his coffee. They didn't mean any harm. I let out a dry laugh. No. They just meant to remind me I'm only good for something when they can use me. He didn't have a response for that. Just sat there in silence, stirring that coffee like it might give him the answer. After a while, he nodded slowly, like maybe, just maybe, he finally understood. So that's it, huh? I gave a small nod. That's really it? He let out another long sigh and got to his feet. Well, I hope you know what you're getting yourself into. I let out a half smile. For once in my life? I actually do. And just like that, whatever final thread was left tying me to them, it snapped. A few days later, my phone lit up. It was a message from my mom. Mom, we need to talk. Please. I didn't answer. An hour later, another one buzzed through. Mom, things are getting really hard over here, you know. Then came the kicker. Mom, your father's business is falling apart. We really need your help. And there it was. Not a shred of apology. Not even the slightest hint that they realized how badly they'd wronged me. Just another request dressed up as concern. I didn't respond. That evening, a new message popped up, this one from Katie. Katie, seriously? You're just gonna let Mom and Dad fall apart like this? You're being so selfish. I actually chuckled out loud. Me? Selfish? I typed back one line. Me? I learned from the best. Then I blocked her. I wasn't about to play their little game anymore. And for the first time, man, it felt damn good. A week slipped by without a single word. I could practically hear their panic through the silence. My whole life, they'd had a hold on me. Used guilt like a leash, kept me in line with that constant sense of duty. But the second I stopped falling in line, the whole act lost its grip. Still, I wasn't naive, I knew they wouldn't go down quietly. Sure enough, one night, my aunt, honestly the only relative I've got any respect for, called me up. I hesitated for a second, but I picked up. Her voice came through tense and irritated. "What exactly did you do?" I grinned. "What do you mean?" "Your parents are in shambles," she sighed. "Your mom won't stop crying, your dad's completely unhinged, and Katie's walking around like it's the end of the world." I leaned back on the couch, more entertained than anything. "Sounds like a tough week." "You know what this is about," she pressed. "Your dad's company's falling apart. He can't keep up on his own, and he's having a hard time finding anyone good to hire." Good. I knew how badly he depended on me, even if he'd never admit it out loud. He always figured I'd just stick around forever, never realize my value, never dare to leave. Well, now I had. And he was finally feeling the consequences. "They want me back, don't they?" I asked. She scoffed, "Of course they do. But they'll never say it out loud. Your dad's too full of pride, and your mom? She's busy playing the poor, misunderstood victim. But between you and me," her voice dropped to a whisper, "they're scared. They don't know how to function without you." I let that sink in. All those years they made me feel like I should be grateful just to be around. Like I was some burden they graciously tolerated. But now? Now it was plain as day, they were the ones who'd been leaning on me all along. "Let them figure it out," I said calmly. She exhaled. "I figured you'd say that." There was a quiet pause, and then she added, "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you." That caught me off guard. "Really?" "Yeah. I've seen how they treated you. I know this wasn't easy. But you're finally standing your ground. They didn't think you had it in you." I smiled. Neither did I. When we hung up, I just sat there in the silence, letting it all settle in. For the first time, I wasn't some invisible punching bag. I wasn't the forgotten one anymore. I was free. And they were finally facing the fallout of their own mess. Days passed. Then a full week. Longer than I figured it'd be, honestly. But I knew my folks, they weren't the type to just give up. If they were this quiet, it only meant one thing, they were cooking up something. And right on cue, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Katie. I let out a long sigh. I could have ignored them. I really could have. But part of me was curious. I wanted to hear what they had to say now that they had no cards left to play. So I opened the door, leaned against the frame, and asked flatly, "What do you want?" My mother stepped forward, her face pulled into that strained expression she wore when she wanted to appear worried. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk." I didn't say a word. Just stared at her. She shifted, obviously uncomfortable. "We've been thinking things over, and maybe we overreacted back at the airport." I raised one eyebrow. "Overreacted?" She nodded quickly, her voice taking on that sticky sweet tone she always used when she was trying to twist the situation her way. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just supposed to be a little fun." I crossed my arms. "So, canceling my flight and leaving me stranded was just a harmless joke?" "Well," she hesitated. "You have to admit, you went too far. Selling the car? Taking all the money? Quitting your father's company? That was cruel." Ah, there it was. The real reason they were here. Not to make things right. Not to say sorry. They were just trying to make me feel bad. Flip the script. Paint me as the bad guy. I gave a half smirk. "And what exactly do you want me to do about that?" That's when my dad finally opened his mouth, his voice low and rough. "You've made your point. Now it's time to come home." I blinked. "Home?" "Yes," he said, more firmly this time. "Come back to the company. We'll just pretend none of this ever happened." That's what my father said, as if the past could be wiped clean with a shrug. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You think I want to come back after everything you've done?" I asked, voice steady. Katie scoffed, arms crossed like always. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You're punishing mom and dad for no reason. I turned toward her, amusement tugging at the corners of my mouth. No reason? You mean after being treated like a tool my whole life? After being the one cleaning up every single one of your messes while getting nothing but silence or mockery in return? Yeah, Katie. No reason at all. Her lips tightened into a straight line. No retort this time. Then my mom's patience finally snapped. We raised you. We gave you everything. I stared at her, blank and calm. No. You took everything. And the only time you ever loved me was when I was doing something for you. That one landed. She didn't speak. The silence stretched longer than usual. My father gritted his teeth, clearly at the edge of his pride. You'll regret this, he said, as if it was some kind of curse. I tilted my head. I don't think I will. And with that, I stepped back and shut the door. No yelling. No dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet, solid click. I stood there for a moment, listening to their muffled complaints. But eventually, the sound faded. Their footsteps retreated. And I smiled to myself. Because finally, they got it. I was never coming back. And something strange happened after that last confrontation. The guilt? Gone. That heavy weight I'd carried for years, always wondering if I was the problem, if maybe I was the broken one, lifted off me like fog in the morning sun. No more checking my phone with dread. No more hoping they'd say sorry. No more twisting myself into knots to earn a place that was never truly mine. I was done. And in that silence came something else, opportunity. With the money I reclaimed, I had options. I upgraded to a better apartment, not fancy, just mine. A space that finally felt like a home. I poured energy into myself. Took courses, polished up my skills, leaned into my new job. And without my family constantly bleeding me dry, something incredible happened. I thrived. A month later, Aunt Lisa texted me. Your parents are struggling. Business is worse than ever. Katie moved back in with them. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then typed back. That's not my problem. And I meant it. Fully. Freely. Months turned into a year. In that time, I built something real. Something entirely separate from them. My job? Way better than I ever imagined. I was seen. Respected. Paid well. And 6 months in? I got promoted. For the first time, I wasn't just working to survive, I was building towards something I could be proud of. I got smart with my finances, made some solid investments. Bought myself a decent car. Nothing flashy, just mine. I even started traveling. Seeing new places on my terms. Not waiting for someone to tell me I deserved a break. And then there was photography. Something I'd always loved, but never had the time or space to pursue. Now I did. Socially? That shifted too. Without my family draining every ounce of energy, I found myself reconnecting with old friends. Making new ones. I even started dating someone who, for the first time, treated me like I mattered, not as a convenience, not as a fallback, but as someone worth showing up for. I was happy. Meanwhile, my parents? They were unraveling. I didn't go looking for updates, but they trickled in anyway. Whispered through extended family. My dad's company was floundering without me to carry the weight. No one wanted to work for him. Deadlines missed. Contracts dropped. All those years he leaned on me, thinking I'd never walk away. He was finally learning what that cost him. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it ring out. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Silence. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Hey. It's Katie. I nearly laughed. What do you want? I asked flatly. She hesitated. Look, things have been rough. Mom and Dad are struggling. And, well, I thought maybe we could grab coffee. Catch up. I leaned back, smiling. Catch up? Yeah. And this sudden need to catch up, it wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that you all need money, would it? Another pause. Then a sigh. Come on. It's not like that. I chuckled. Yes. It is. She sounded confused. You're not mad? No, I said. I'm actually kind of glad you called. You are? Yeah. Because it proves I made the right choice. And with that, I hung up. Blocked the number. And that was the last time I ever heard from them. There was a time when I truly believed I needed my family. That no matter how badly they treated me, I had to keep trying. Keep proving myself. That love meant sacrifice and mine, always. But now? I know better. I was so much more than they ever let me believe. And the second I walked away, when I finally chose myself over their chaos, I thrived. The best part? They had no claim to it. No access to my joy. No seat at my table. They spent years trying to make me feel small. Disposable. Less than. But now? They're the ones scraping by. And me? I'm free.